Humans are wired for trade. No other species trades. But for negotiation, you have to fight that pre-wiring.
Today we have Derek Blazensky and Todd Camp,
foundational leaders at the Pareto Group,
who specialize in negotiation coaching for CEOs
and startup executives across Silicon Valley.
Part of our dialogue and the words we use surgically are designed to lower the barriers. You could say, I expected that I would have received payment by now. What's holding it back? That's an interrogative. It's different than why hasn't it been sent yet? It will cause two different responses.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Human beings make the most effective decisions when they're as close to neutral as possible.
Emotional neutral.
Emotionally neutral, right? Because human beings are positive, we're negative, we go back and forth. So when you're in a conversation and someone is being extremely negative, the idea is
people sometimes, they go into these negotiations and they use all these tactics. And they don't remember that when the negotiation's over, usually that's the beginning of the go forward relationships. And it's really hard to have a great relationship with your new boss who just bought your company if you're a total during the negotiation.
Another sin in our book is trying to achieve too much in one meeting.
Yes.
I have the decision maker there. I've got their entire staff there. So here's our agenda. Way too much.
The next time someone says no to me or rejects me, what should I do?
Someone says no to you, you can think through a sequence or a list of what we call the 4 reasons why people reject. One is,
it is so wild to me that the exact same negotiation system that founders are using in Silicon Valley all the time is the same negotiation system that some of the most elite FBI hostage negotiators also use.
Our founders, yes.
Yeah, yes. Okay, so I want to start by telling the story of how we met. Cool. So I was chatting with my friend, Steve Eidelman, who you guys know now runs Modern Animal. And this was my second startup, but the first startup where I was the CEO. And I was in a really tough spot, out of money, valley of death, 18 months initial fundraise. And Steve had somehow, I remember he told me this story, how he was trying to get this big food distributor, he was running a Whistle, the dog collar company, trying to get them to respond to an email to put a flyer for Whistle into the dog food. And somehow, 12 weeks later, he sells the company for like $110 million to that same company he could not elicit a response from. And I said, Steve, how did you do that? And like, I need help. And he said, well, I got these coaches. You might want to talk to them. I said, coaches? He goes, yeah, they're like negotiation coaches. I said, okay. He goes, but they have these 3 rules. So they have 3 rules. He goes, yeah, the first rule is they only take introductions to VC-backed CEOs from other VC-backed CEOs. I said, okay. He said, the second rule is they're going to interview you for like an hour to decide if they're willing to work for you. And I was like, oh. And he goes, and the third rule is you can never tell anyone you work with them. And I was like, what? Oh, I said, fine, whatever. Okay, like, I'd love to do it. And so he makes the introduction, and I'm in a really bad mental state. I'm in this, what I felt was an impossible situation. And I think the first phone call was with you, Derek. I was driving down to Santa Cruz, and I said, Derek, I got this problem. I have to negotiate with this Fortune 500 retailer. I got to tell them that if they don't sign a contract from scratch and wire us $1 million in 2 weeks, I'm out of money and my company folds. And I'll never forget what you said. You said, yeah, that's no problem. and I said, sorry, maybe I didn't explain that well. I'm screwed. I'm capital F screwed. You said, look, you got to be okay with feeling unokay. We're going to write a script together, and you're going to call this president of this Fortune 500 retailer, and you're going to read the script. I said, yeah, whatever. Because at this point, in my head, I'm done anyway. So I actually found the script and I wrote it out. I wanted to read it. So I called this guy. His name was Chris. And I said, hey, Chris, this is the script. Before we get started, I wanted to make sure that we're on the same page by stating our mutual goal. Is that okay with you? He said, yeah. I said, okay. So our mutual goal is to give this retailer enough time to work with my company so you can decide if we'll be a central part of this big initiative you're working on, and it could eventually lead to an M&A. And then I said, and this is the script, how does that sound? What am I missing? And I think actually we had met like in Campbell for an hour after Thanksgiving. You guys were amazing. And what you'd said in that session was, if you get this right, he will say the words, "That's right." So I wrote down in my notes, he'll say, "That's right." So Chris makes some edits, and then I say it again, and Chris literally goes, "Yeah, that sounds right." And I was like, "What? Like, what alchemy is going on?" So I then moved to the second, and by the way, final part of the negotiation. I said, "Okay, Chris, now that we've established our mutual goal, it's important you know if we are unable to get this contract signed and paid by December 18th, our mutual goal will be at risk. How would you like to proceed?" And 2 weeks later, and this is not an exaggeration, not only was the contract signed, that company wired us $1 million. Insane. Absolutely insane. And so the reason I'm so excited, for a lot of obvious reasons, to do this, have this conversation with you, is so much of this very contrarian, I would argue, negotiation style, it is the opposite of anything that I learned at Wharton doing negotiations. Like, get to yes, and your kind of messages, don't do that stuff. Actually, that's probably not going to be the right move. It's a contrarian way to negotiating that has changed my entire life. Every founder I've ever introduced, either to you or to the system, they've been absolutely, their outcomes have significantly altered. And the thing that I love about it, though, is a lot of the tactics you'd think you do in negotiations, like, kind of being an the message is don't do that, and it will not serve you. So if you're up for it, it's an incredible system. I want to talk all about it. The first thing in this system that I love is, I think a normal negotiation, you come in and you're focused on what you want, right? You said, don't do that. The first thing you got to figure out is figure out your mission and purpose in the world of the person you're negotiating with. So can you tell me about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the benefits, if you think about how nervous you were and how much pressure you felt, right? When your runway was so short, you had to have that deal. When you focus on mission and purpose, what it is you can provide the other party, 100% in their world to their benefit, and how you can provide that. When you do that, it's almost like a calming mechanism because you forget about what you need, right, to stay alive. And you're thinking about how can I benefit the person on the other side of the table. So it's a lot different than what you see a lot of people try and do with tactics like bluffing or making things appear like everything's great when they're not.
Yeah.
So yeah, mission and purpose is really a driving force on everything we do. We try and establish it very early and often to make sure we have it correct, right?
Yeah.
Understanding exactly what it is we can provide and how, and making sure they, validate that and actually confirm it to be correct. That's correct. That's exactly why we're talking. What did I miss? What would you
We
have?
refer to mission purpose as an emotional term sheet.
Huh.
And if you think about term sheets, which is a big part of our business, all of our clients do term sheets for all different kinds of deals, investments and commercial deals. And if you think about term sheets, first of all, they're generally non-binding. They may have a exclusivity clause or a confidentiality clause involved that's binding, but for the most part, term sheets are non-binding.
Right.
But they're lawyered up on both sides a lot.
Yeah.
And they're not for being non-binding. And the question is, why is that? And we think of term sheets and this emotional term sheet as pitons on a wall if you're a rock climber. Now, you should know enough about risk-taking and our practice that I'm not a rock climber. It's not something I would do.
You have the physique, though.
But when you're climbing, you put a piton in, and that means you can only fall so far.
Right.
And an emotional term sheet, you're setting yourself up so when shit goes sideways, and it always goes sideways, you don't have a real deal until it has gone sideways.
Yeah.
Because until then, you're not really talking about the most important thing.
I love that. You don't have a real deal until it's gone sideways.
That's when you know you have a real deal. But if you have this emotional term sheet, and the reason we do term sheets in general is so when stuff does go sideways, you fall back to the last place you were in agreement. So what we want to do, and what we did with you there with your customer, is we wanted to establish this emotional term sheet first, and only after that's clear, then you can ask for what you want. And we like to say sequence is important. So If you want to go to work dressed crisply, you want to wash and iron your clothes. You don't iron and wash your clothes.
Yeah, right.
And even if your spouse has left the iron out and it's hot and it's really convenient and you just want to, it would be perfect to iron right now.
Yeah.
No, don't do that. And same with, don't go into a meeting, don't go into the call you had with your customer and ready to ask for what you want too soon. Make sure you have this emotional term sheet first.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That's so one thing I remember when, we were first talking about it is the other benefit, and tell me if this is right, is when you establish the mission and purpose in the world of the person you're negotiating with, or we'll call it the opponent, just for, easy length. Respected opponent, is the thing that I noticed as I've learned the system over the now a lot of years we've been working together. I'm very grateful for that, by the way, is now instead of them thinking about, well, what you're trying to get, it flips the script. And because you've done this thing where you've tried to genuinely, deeply understand what motivates them, everything you ask for now is in service of who? It's in service of them now. And so they start negotiating the direction that you want to achieve what they want as well, which is like, it's like this weird Aikido, judo move, but it's so fascinating.
So decisions, we're big on decisions. They move negotiations forward. Both our decisions, the other party's decisions. Having a mission and purpose, emotional term sheet set, not only does it help you figure out exactly what it's going to take to actually execute, right? What is, a lot of times our clients won't know exactly what it is they want until they've done, so much discovery and understanding. What is the challenges, or what are the challenges that we're solving for them? What are the opportunities in the market we're trying to help them secure? Once that is tailored, fine-tuned, and agreed to, a lot of times that's when you realize, okay, what are we going to have to charge to actually execute? And not only execute, but execute with no risk to their program, right? And it's also a great foundation for when they start pushing back on pricing or terms. That mission and purpose, you can ask yourself, okay, with what they're asking us to lead or to give up or to give on, can we actually execute on everything they said they wanted?
Mm-hmm.
Can we do that at no risk? And if the answer is yes, and you want to make the business decision to potentially think about what that looks like, we wouldn't necessarily fault you for that. But if the answer is no, you have to put that problem in their world. We can't execute at that level. If we did, we'd be putting your program at risk. How much risk is acceptable?
Love that.
Or what would you like us to take out? Because we can't do it at that price.
Okay, so let's take a step back. So if you're up for it, let's talk about the building blocks of the system. Imagine it's the first time we're kind of talking about it. And the thing that I loved is early on, you described two things very clearly. One is, this is not your MBA's negotiation system. This is not the getting to yes as fast as possible, all those things. Talk a lot about, hey, actually no is a very effective tool in negotiation. And the second thing is that this system is the most effective way of telling the truth. So let's start basics, building blocks. Like, you're a founder, you're kind of describing it for the first time. What is it? What is the system?
So the system was developed actually to help you manage your decision-making process. It's meant to keep you safe, right? It's meant to help you actually focus on what you can control, which is your activities, behaviors, decisions, right? So there is a structure to it. There are principles involved. So over time, when you're thinking about it and you've never, heard of us or have heard of our system, there's a couple books that are the topics of it. One is called Start With No, written by my father, Jim Camp, back in 2001. And another one's written by Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference. You'll see a lot of synergies between those two.
Didn't your dad train Chris Voss?
Yes, he did. He and his team while he was at the hostage crisis unit back in, I think, 2004.
I just want to, sorry to interrupt for 3 seconds, which is, it is so wild to me that the exact same negotiation system that founders are using in Silicon Valley all the time is the same negotiation system that some of the most elite FBI hostage negotiators also use.
Our founders, yes.
Yeah.
Most founders are using win-win.
And that's one of the benefits of the system, right? Is, we were talking on the way over here. There's really two prevailing mindsets in negotiation. People who think about win-win, because for a lot of people, negotiation comes with a lot of stress, fear, anxiety.
Oh, yeah.
And so cliches and sayings like win-win kind of makes everybody feel good, looking for a win-win deal.
Yeah.
And then the other mindset is, I'm going to use power and leverage to get everything I want from the person.
Yeah.
So when those win-win mindsets show up against those folks, I won't use the word jerk, but when they go up against a very contentious, aggressive, bully, alpha personality that really pushes hard, gives guilt trips, makes you feel bad about yourself, win-win, stands no chance, right? So a lot of this was built to help people transition from thinking they can manage a result like win-win, right? You don't even know if you'll have a win-win till years, months, decades down the road sometimes. And a lot of win-win deals end up in court. And people still believe it, right? People still believe it's a valid system. There is no system. What is the system behind win-win? How does it tell you to prepare?
Yeah.
And worst of all, what does it assume when you hear the word? I think about it assumes both parties are getting ready to compromise. The challenge is, those power and leverage type negotiators, they don't think they have to negotiate, or they don't think they have to compromise on anything, because they know I have a sitting duck right in front of me. I know with a win-win mindset, I'm going to get everything I want.
Take advantage.
Yeah.
So but maybe just from a building block standpoint, let's just start with, how would you define a negotiation? Like, what is a scenario where this system starts to make sense? What is a negotiation?
In the simplest form, anytime someone's asking you to make a decision, or you're asking them. That could be with your spouse about where to go to dinner. Literally, anytime someone's asking you to make a decision, you're asking them. You can apply our method and how to prepare and think about it. It's that's kind of the beginning, I would say.
I love that. Now, obviously, you've done this a lot for a bunch of companies, but sales. I mean, I think there's obvious things like the term sheet with the investor or the client negotiation, but every sales conversation you could also define as a negotiation. And I think you've defined it in the past as it's any scenario where two parties come to the table to reach an agreement where both parties have the ability to veto.
They have the right to veto.
The right to veto.
That's correct. And in general in life, when you take away someone's right to veto, really bad things happen.
Yeah.
Internationally, as we see from time to time. So anytime you need to make a decision that involves the agreement of others, that's a negotiation.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. I love it. Okay. So building blocks, and then I have a couple questions that I'm eager to get into. So one thing you mentioned is, one of the most critical things you start by doing is you establish your mission and purpose in the world of your respected opponent. And now everything that you negotiate is in service of what they want, which is huge. Second one, which I know you've talked about, but I want to dive a little deeper, is not shying away from saying no. Now, I think there's a misconception that when you say no in a negotiation, it's maybe a jerk move, or maybe it's the ending of the negotiation. Like, there's no way to say no. And I see this a lot, like, nope. And they walk off because negotiation's over. But that's not what you say. You say, no, seek no.
One of the problems with no is we're just afraid to say no, and we're afraid to hear no. Humans are wired for trade. No other species trades. Closest thing is monkeys do a little bit of trade, but humans are wired for trade, and that's kept us alive. It's been very good for the species.
Yeah.
But for negotiation, you have to fight that pre-wiring. Just like a swimmer training to be an elite swimmer. You have to learn to put your face in the water, and your body rejects that. But to be an elite swimmer, you have to get over that feeling, and you've got to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and get in the pool. And so to be an elite negotiator, you have to fight back that normal tendency, that pre-wiring to want to trade. So that's really difficult.
Interesting.
And so when we say no, and we have our clients say no, we're not saying no and walking away. We're saying no and we stand ready to make the next decision.
Yes.
We say no, we're not able to accept that. Where do we go from here? What happens next? And when we hear no, we counsel our clients, don't feel like when you hear no, they're rejecting your last name, where you grew up, where you went to school, your whole family lineage.
Yeah, it's
no,
not personal.
It's not personal. They're just rejecting the last thing you asked them to agree to. And they stand ready to make the next decision. And if you think they're walking away when they say no, even if they say no in the harshest terms, no, that's it. Pencils down. We hear lots of phrases. We're pencils down. Or that's a non-starter. Or no, we're out of here. We say, where did we lose you? And as soon as they answer that question, that means you're back in a negotiation. You're back in dialogue.
That's true.
Can I say one more thing about?
Yeah, please. Yeah, totally.
Because that the word veto essentially just means rejecting, saying no.
Right. Yeah.
And we know to be true that when someone makes a decision, it's one decision at one point in time, and we know new decisions can be made. Now on our side, we have a lot of clients that I think forget they have the right to veto because they have so much need for the deal, the feeling of pressure, they have to get it done, right? So what we typically do is think about how do we communicate to the other party that they always have the right to push back, reject, tell us no if it doesn't make sense, right? Because when you're dealing with folks who are pretty aggressive on the other side of the table and you extend genuinely and sincerely, they have the right to veto and push back and disagree. When you do that, you're doing a couple things. One is you're not showing any need. I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
If the other party thinks you need this deal, when you let them know they have the right to reject anything at any point in time, that perception of how bad you need the deal kind of simmers and goes away. Also, when you let them know, and in return, I'll do the same. So we're going to start a business relationship shooting each other straight.
Yep.
How acceptable is that? Right? So the right to veto is just so big.
Todd, you mentioned neediness, and I want to talk about this for a second because I think often in negotiations, especially if you need it, a tendency can be, okay, well, the way I'm going to win this is I'm going to corner him. I'm going to rush him. I'm not going to let him say no. I'm going to really push it. And I remember reading in your dad's book that there is this one thing that if a salesperson said it at the get-go, at the outset of their conversation, there's a 30% increase in the conversion. And they said, if at any time this doesn't seem like the right fit, feel free to say no. And they started off the conversation with that. And this could be a cold call. And what it meant was exactly what you said, which is the person receiving it now is like, they kind of relax. They know that now they can say no at any time. They're not being attacked by this salesperson. It also makes you kind of lean in, like, well, if it's that good and you're not pushing it, now I kind of want to know, like, why don't you need this? Why is this something that's, you're willing to say walk away from? Removing neediness is such a it's a tactic that keeps your respected opponent feeling safe, which I love. And it's kind of the opposite of what a jerk would do in a negotiation. I wanted to just say that for a second because it's such a critical thing. I think most people make the mistake.
Yeah, deals come together, in our opinion, right? Because people feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Right? Not because of fear of missing out, but they feel comfortable that you're actually going to be able to execute on your side of the table.
Yes.
So offering the right to veto is huge on many different levels.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, humans' eyes face forward because we're predators.
He's right.
Some are more aggressive predators than others. So if they can see that you need this deal and that you're freaking out, they're going to try and take advantage of that.
Oh, yeah.
Make it appear like if they don't get everything they want, there is no deal.
Yep.
They're going to try and make you believe that.
So the opposite of that approach, of the predation approach, is you've also, and I remember this multiple times in these really high stake negotiations. I remember once I was selling a company and there's this really aggressive CEO on the other side trying to buy. And you said, Healey, don't forget, use words of nurturing. Keep them safe. Now, I feel like I went to a bunch of negotiation courses at Wharton. I never heard that. None of the professors were like, the most important thing is you want to make them really feel safe. make them feel cozy. So maybe like, what's behind that? What's the whole point there?
There's a couple tactics people use. Even the phrase, we're going to close this deal.
Mm-hmm.
Just that action, closing this deal, implies some feeling of control. And two mistakes our clients make that we try to intervene with is the notion that you can either close or force somebody to do something, or maybe even manipulate somebody into some decision that works out for you, or you can outsmart them. And those are two really bad paths. If you think the way I'm going to get this deal done is I know exactly where I'm going to put the fulcrum, and I know exactly where I'm going to put the lever, and I'm going to apply pressure. I'm going to close them, or I'm going to outsmart them. I'm going to lead them down some kind of cul-de-sac and trap them. Those are just really bad techniques.
Yeah.
So the thing that's so powerful about if at any time you're not able to accept what I'm asking you to agree to, I want you to feel comfortable telling me that. Ultimate sign of showing no neediness. And we like to think of deals don't get closed, they come together.
Mm.
There are a lot of models for what is a negotiation. The chess model is one, right? Negotiation is a game of chess. Some people think of it that way.
Yeah.
But in a game of chess, humans are not very good at predicting permutations and all the moves in advance on a chessboard.
Right.
Great for computers. Most people not so good at predicting all the moves on the chessboard. Other people think of negotiation as a game of poker, right? Keep your cards close, fake, feign intention, all that stuff.
Right.
And the problem with poker is it often leads to a game of chicken. Really high risk game, right? Who's gonna blink first?
Yeah.
Also very unsafe. We think of the model, if it's a game, we think of a different game as a model for negotiation. And it's a game I used to play as a kid in the pool called Marco Polo, which is a game of tag where one swimmer closes their eyes, and you're trying to tag one of your opponents, and you yell out Marco, and everyone else responds with Polo. It's really a game of echolocation. And so with each volley, you get closer and closer to your opponent until essentially you come together. That's probably a better way to think of negotiation as Marco Polo. And in that game, both parties are moving at all times. They're moving around. Nothing is really static. And it's very different than, say, a game of chess where you're trying to outsmart somebody, or a game of poker where you're trying to fake someone out.
Marco Polo, it turns out, is one step at a time. You say Marco, you get the information, they say Polo, you take action, and then what's the next thing you do? Say Marco again.
You make progress. You don't try to achieve too much at once.
Yeah, that's right.
Another sin in our book is trying to achieve too much in one meeting.
Yes.
I have the decision maker there. I've got their entire staff there. So here's our agenda.
Yeah.
Way too much.
Yeah.
We don't have an emotional term sheet yet. We don't have agreement on mission and purpose. If you come out of that meeting with just that, agreement on mission and purpose, and you don't even get to what you want yet, solid meeting.
Yeah. Amen. So one thing you mentioned, Todd, that I think is, I want to so there's all these traps people fall into in negotiation. And one of the biggest traps you fall into is you bluff. You tout a false deadline, tout false alternatives. And my experience has been, if you do that, like, especially let's say you're a founder and you're raising some venture money. You say, I need term sheets by this Friday, otherwise, deal's off. We're not going to do the deal. Well, what I've experienced is what the person on the VC side of it does invariably is they wait till Saturday or Monday. Hey, Healey, did you get deal done? You have term sheet off? And you go, well, no, we got time. Well, what's happened? You've lost all credibility. So, I think of bluffing as like this power move. I'm going to force it down. It's high stakes. Could we talk about the trap of bluffing? Like, why do you never bluff? And I want people to really...
Well, again, back to the power and leverage. You should tell the story about when you asked one of our prospective clients, or he asked you, what is it you do?
My first meeting with someone who was introduced to me, I said, tell me how you think about negotiation. He said, oh, negotiation is the art of bluffing and getting away with it. So you're probably, if you're going to help me, I assume you're going to try to help me learn other ways to get away with bluffing. I said, actually, no, that's not what's going to happen here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, what are they looking for? They're either trying to identify or somehow create leverage. That's what they're looking for.
Or a false sense of urgency.
Absolutely, with false deadlines, and that's something we never coach our clients to bluff or set false deadlines.
Yep.
If we're setting a deadline, you already know this. It's real.
It's real. That's right.
Unless we get new data in that
Yep.
changes our perception or gives us new information that would have us think twice about that deadline. But if we set it, we mean it. So people they like to bluff and use it as a way of pressuring and creating a sense of urgency and power.
And you gave me this formula once, which, by the way, if you recall back to the first script, I realized you gave me this formula, which is, if this doesn't happen by this date, our mutual goal will be at risk. And I love that tactic because it's saying, here's what you need to do. Here is a deadline. You're not saying it's over, it's screwed, the deal's over. You're just saying the thing that you want, respected opponent, is now at risk. It's like the perfect way to deliver that.
We'll often have our clients tell their opponent, if at any time I discover something that will put this relationship at risk or put our ability to work together at risk, I will come let you know that. It takes deadline off the table for right now. But later on, when you do need to impose a deadline because it's real, you can go to them and say, remember when I mentioned that if anything were to put this opportunity at risk, I would come let you know? Well, the time is now.
Mm-hmm.
We do have something. And that deadline, when we set a deadline like that, it's real. Now, people set false deadlines all the time for good reason, actually, which is deadlines, although many times, most of the time they're missed, they do drive behavior.
Right.
So when our clients are asked by their opponent, how much time do I have? You've told me time is of the essence.
Yep.
Timing is important. How much time do I have? We'll reverse. How much time do you need? Because if they put
that's good.
If they put
That's
down a
great.
deadline, it's their deadline.
Yeah.
If they overrun that deadline, which they likely will, who loses credibility?
Right.
Our opponent loses credibility, not you. So we like to reverse. Well, timing is important. How much time do you need?
I love that. So one thing, this is kind of, it's a thread related, but I wanted to talk about how you taught me how to ask questions and how related it is to kind of not just taking the edge off of questions, but also to advancing things. So I remember there's a couple stories I have. One was I was negotiating with this big electronics company. Let's just say that's what it was. And if I guess I always have cash issues. If they didn't pay me, I couldn't make payroll for this startup. And what I wanted to do, which was like kind of like the jerk move, I wanted to be like, hey, mother, are you going to pay me? Like, that was the question I really wanted to ask, because he'd been sitting on it forever. And you said, well, start with an interrogative if you need more information to move it forward. And interrogative, of course, who, what, where, when, why, how. And so I was like, okay, what's the question? And I realized, I called up this guy. I said, hey, it's been a few weeks now. Who from accounts payable could I work with to get this paid? And he instantly started thinking of the answer. And he said, oh, that's Betty. I got paid the next day. And so there's something about it wasn't just taking the edge off of the question. Because look, as you said, when you do need something, it's really hard to not have your kind of like flight or fight mode going in. But that method of asking questions is his way of, it disarms someone and helps them to think about how they're going to solve the problem with you. You get more information, and it is not aggressive. It's not like this way you're going to kind of alpha them. You're just seeking more information. Like, why the interrogative is working. When should you use an interrogative versus a verb, and how does it play into the whole system?
I guess I'll start. In that particular scenario, you didn't say, why haven't I been paid yet?
Right. That's true. I didn't.
Even though why is an interrogative, it's a cautious one for us. We only use it in very circumscribed situations. The word why tends to come off as accusatory and makes people defensive. We don't want people to build up their defenses. We want to lower. Part of our dialogue and the words we use surgically are designed to lower the barriers.
Lower the barriers.
So in a case like that, you could say, I expected that I would have received payment by now.
Yeah.
What's holding it back? That's an interrogative. It's different than why hasn't it been sent yet? It will cause two different responses.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, recently we had a client that is being asked to deliver on something ahead of schedule. And it's a pretty important piece, whether or not they're going to win the business or get the deal. And so one of the questions we recently had a client ask is, what happens? We're going to do everything we can to meet that timeline, and we're trying to figure out how we get it done. What happens if we're not able to commit to?
It's a great question.
Get them to tell you, well, then you're out. Or get them to say, well, I don't know. We haven't thought about that. I have to get back to you. It's really important. Those what and how questions are obviously always the most valuable because it forces the other party to think. When they're thinking and talking, they're creating a vision in their own mind, right? Versus you telling someone, trying to convince someone.
Totally.
So those open-ended interrogative questions are really key.
It can help them find the solution. I found that too, where I was doing this financing recently, and this investor really wanted to get in the deal, and he started to say, well, we'll do this and this and this, and we'll do an IC on Saturday, and we'll beat the deadline, because I had a real deadline, by the way, and I knew he couldn't do it, and I wanted to respectfully get him to say that. And I said, hey, so let's say we do this and it goes well. What are all the steps between that moment and term sheet that you have to do in the next 24 hours? And he sat there and he goes, can't get it done. And it was so helpful because it wasn't mean. I wasn't trying to push him, or I was just trying to help him see. And there's something about the way that you ask the question. It helps them to figure out the solution almost on their behalf and on your behalf. Okay, so another one I want to talk about. This is another M&A deal we worked on together. You try not to say the names, of course. And I remember, and the theme of this is, what do you do if people are being a jerk to you in negotiation? So I remember I kept trying to get this negotiation point won, and he kept fighting back no matter what. And you gave me this line, which I thought was so wonderful. You said, I probably haven't done a great job of explaining this very well, so let me try again. And it was this way of just like taking the edge off. I was so frustrated. I wanted to be like, why are you such a D? Like, I wanted to just let this guy have it. And you had this way of kind of, removing the edge from the entire interaction, which was so good. One thing you guys taught me, which I love, negative strip lining. You talk about that?
Absolutely. The idea is human beings make the most effective decisions when they're as close to neutral as possible.
Emotionally neutral,
right? Because human beings are positive, we're negative, we go back and forth. I don't think we're ever actually neutral. I'm not sure that's even possible. But when we're in conversations, we know the best decisions, both on our side, their side, are made when we're close to neutral. So when you're in a conversation and someone is being extremely negative, the idea is how do you stop that negative momentum?
Yes. Just
long enough to actually bring them back closer to neutral and have a productive conversation. And so the way you do it, which is kind of counterintuitive, I almost think of it like, how do you stop a forest fire? Well, you get out in front of it and burn everything that's in its path.
Yeah, that's a great metaphor.
So when it gets there, nowhere to go. That's a good way to
totally
remember it. But so when someone says something, extremely negative, like you really let us down, that's the worst service we've ever received. You say something slightly more negative. Right? So you say, I know, I'm actually worried you're not going to work with us anymore. I'm concerned we're going to lose you as a client. So you say something just a tad more negative, and you should see their emotions just slightly, at least stop going negative, come back. I had a client one time where he was selling automobile manufacturing tools. This was wild. And there was one of these automobile manufacturers where they had a good cop and a bad cop. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Classic.
Classic power
Yeah.
and leverage. You're going to be the nice person. I'm going to come in, slam my folder on the table, and just start laying into him. Right.
Yeah.
And so my client, his name's Mike. He said, okay, when this happens, I want you to do the following. He was telling his salesperson, he's like, when the bad cop comes in and starts going off, I just want you to calmly start packing up your stuff. And we get up and start acting like we're going to leave without even saying a word. Right. And so the bad cop comes in, starts laying into him. He looks at him. He's like, all right, time to go. And they start walking out. And the guy's like, wait a minute, where are you going? Don't leave. We got important things we have to work on. So the act of leaving the meeting was so negative that the guy came back and said, no, don't leave, guys. Let's talk about this.
Oh my
Right?
God.
So it's just,
That's amazing.
yeah, that's a way of just stopping the negative momentum. On the flip side, if people are really positive, that's kind of little high risk to keep them hanging out there, because if you let them down,
Interesting.
right? If you let them down in the slightest, that pendulum's going to come swinging back, and then that's not a good thing anyway. So on the positive side, they say something extremely positive, like, we can't, wait to get started with you. We're so excited. You're going to change our business. You want to bring them back just a little bit by going a little less positive. Well, we appreciate that. We're looking forward to working with you. The reality is, though, we have a lot of paperwork to get done before we can get started. Right. So you bring them back just a little bit.
This is crazy. God.
Yeah. So it's just, it's a behavioral tool. We always recommend practice it in low risk settings.
Yeah. I want to tell a story about this, by the way, because it just, like, a lot of this stuff feels like freaking alchemy. And I feel like you're so used to it, you just say, like, oh, yeah, the guy, like, gets up and walks away. Anyone who's ever been in a negotiation, when they hear that tactic, they're like, what? Like, you can do that? I remember this banker called me, and it was the classic thing where, he was PO'd. He said, you've been sitting on this engagement letter. My guy's been working for 2 weeks. It's a real jerk move, and you know it. And, the kind of customer service training in me would go, oh, you try to make it better and pull him back in. But I remembered your training. And you said, no, get a little more negative than that. And I was like, am I going to do this? And I go, oh, God, you're right, man. Honestly, if I were you, I would be so pissed off. I would consider firing us as a client. I would not blame you for a second. And he goes, look, I know you guys are busy. The first thing, it took him right back to emotional neutral. It's just like, it's just wild. It's just this wild Aikido move. I love it. Okay. So, another one is, actually, let me take a step back for 2 seconds. So one of the things you also do that I want to note, because it took me by surprise, and I think takes a lot of founders off guard, is you embody a very generous mindset. And I don't know if that's how you describe it. You might not, but in my mind, when a founder meets you, for me, you didn't say, okay, well, here's what the economics are. If you want to do it, you got to do this, or else we're not going to work together. You just literally said, I'll never forget it. Seems like you're in a pickle. We're going to figure this out. It's not a big problem. Tomorrow's Thanksgiving. Let's meet the day after. That was it. That was the entire thing. I said, okay, great. Let's do it. And I think we worked together for like probably a month until we really talked about it. And you said, we're just going to get you through this. What a wildly generous, non thing to do. That when a founder comes to you in a moment of really needing help, instead of trying to twist them or bend them or do whatever you can to squeeze out of them, you just say, hey, let's just get started. Let's get started. We'll figure out the rest later. What's behind that?
It's about being in the world of our opponent. Our opponent in that case is you, the founder. And in their world, many things are like right on the edge at all times.
Yeah.
And so we view ourselves as the coach, and our clients, you in that case, are the athletes on the field. No one ever knows we're there. We're never on the field. And so to help you be effective as your coach, we first want to know, are you coachable? And we're going to discover that by working together without any economics, without any engagement. We're going to discover that when we accomplish something together. We want you to discover what it feels like to use a system, because that might be, it's going to be completely new to you, the system,
Right.
and what it feels like actually to be coached. And because that may not feel good to you. We have a kind of a screed clearing question very early in our process. It may sound a little bit awkward or aggressive, but we ask, did you play a team sport after the age of 14? And some people say, well, yeah, absolutely. And for us, we're looking for band, ballet, basketball, boxing. It all counts. And the reason for that is if you, the sports you played maybe before age 14, those sports were the sports your parents played. Your parents generally chose those sports. They may have even been your coach. And your parent as your coach, they think you're special. If you play sport after age 14, you didn't choose the sport. The sport chooses you. You have to be picked on the team.
Yeah.
You could get cut from the team.
Right.
And the coach you have is different. It's not your parent. They don't think you're special. They want to make you special. And if you've been through that in that time of your life, you already know what it feels like to get very direct critical feedback, 100% to your benefit, not to make you feel good, but to make you special, to make you better.
Yep.
If we're the first people you've ever experienced that with, we may not be able to be effective. And so we want to figure that out right away. And that's our question. And you would be surprised at the athletes we get. And they say, oh, well, yeah, here was my experience. I was, captain of my college volleyball team. Okay,
Great.
You already know what it feels like. This is going to feel very familiar to you. You're still going to feel uncomfortable from time to time, but you're going to be okay with it.
Yep.
Yeah, and our business, we really, it's kind of unique in terms of we work with fewer numbers of people, and that's by design.
Right.
We want to be with you for a very long period of time, get really deep in the weeds on all your greatest challenges, all your biggest negotiations. And so from, at this point, we've had, I want to say 5 repeat founders that we're now working on their second or third business with.
I
Right?
think I'm one of them.
In terms of, we try and once we identify athletes who we see are very effective
Yeah.
and they're coachable and they're not afraid to execute, even though, they can have a little fear of, you want me to say what?
Right.
Right? That little shock that happens sometimes. But they're people who can be comfortable being uncomfortable, execute. We want to work with them as much as possible. Not all the time are we free and available, but if we are and they come to us with a problem, we call it friends and family, right? We help a lot of our clients, spouses and folks, negotiate new compensation packages for themselves and buy houses.
All kinds of stuff.
All negotiation.
Yeah, we had a client who asked me to coach his brother in a divorce or sister in a divorce. So, if we can help, nothing's off limits, essentially.
So speaking of one thing you taught me that makes me because you guys know me, I talk. If there's silence, I'm going to fill it. I got it from my mom, who got it from her mom. It's just like is you taught me this superpower of STFU, just being quiet. And I think in a negotiation, if you're taking that alpha kind of more controversial tactic, you steamroll, you talk. And you said, no, actually, one of the most important things is you have the superpower of being quiet, like hear from them. And it's, if you were to take a step back and there's a lens you could put on this entire practice, which is obviously kind of bending towards the whole theme here, which is the first thing you're doing when you meet someone is you're understanding their world. You're showing a lot of empathy. And then you're reaffirming what they care about. You're presenting things in the world that matters. You're asking questions that helps them to think about the solution. You're being quiet, letting them talk. I mean, my God, like they're so effective. But when you present it that way, you're like, whoa, you're almost like a therapist to this opponent. But why does I guess to being quiet? You taught me this rule of 7 seconds, which, by the way, let's just do this for a second. Oh, it's so hard.
The easiest way to practice this technique, your newfound superpower, which is the ability to stop talking.
Right.
is when we just talked a little bit about interrogative questions. And sometimes they can be awkward. If you're using it for the first time, we're telling you to ask, where do we go from here? It's that silence. You have to stick the landing. Let the question do its job. And so the tendency when we're uncomfortable is to not stick the landing, is to talk over our own point. Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? Because we really want to work with you and we love you guys and we've built such a great relationship. No, leave all that last part out. Stick the landing. And that's a phrase we use with our clients all the time. We want you to ask this question,
Yep.
then stick the landing.
I love that.
And even if it's just a statement, it sounds like you've done everything you can do.
Yeah.
And then
Let it do its job.
let it do its job.
I love
Because
that.
it's so hard for the other party not to fill that void. And in that split second after when they start talking, you're going to learn something. Todd and I can't tell you what it is, but we can tell you that's the moment they're going to reveal something that you didn't know yet.
Okay, so let's get tactical. The next time someone says no to me or rejects me, what should I do?
Yeah, so this is actually good for your listeners because it's a very simple task that you can do at home. Next time anyone you're working with or in any environment, someone says no to you, you can think through a sequence or a list of what we call the 4 reasons why people reject, because we've essentially identified it really one of the 4 things or a combination of these 4. So next time you hear a no, think through these. One is they lack the emotional vision of benefit associated with a yes. They don't see the big picture, right? Human beings are emotional creatures, emotions involved in every decision we make. So they don't see the emotional vision of benefit. If that's the problem, by the way, it's usually because we went too fast, right? We assume they already know how great we are, how great our product is, and we didn't spend any time in their world to uncover what are their challenges, what are the opportunities that are unique to them, right? Second is they lack data to support the emotional vision of benefit, right? That data component's very important. We have a lot of clients that are doing things, just getting started, where people say, wow, if you can actually pull that off and execute on that, that would change our business. Show me data, show me use cases, show me ROI. What should we expect for our ROI? We don't have any clients yet. Okay, lack of data, pretty easy to say, I'm sorry, come back. Third is they lack the authority to say yes. All they can say is no or maybe, right? A lot of times there's many stakeholders in a process. The person you're dealing with kind of pretends or states they can, make decisions when in actuality they can't, right? So you're not even dealing with the qualified decision makers. And then fourth is that bluffing tactic. So many people like to use. It's number 4 for a reason because it's high risk. We don't want to go there too fast, right? So we ask our clients to think through which of these 4 or which combination. Lack of vision, lack of data, lack of authority, which also could be budget. Authority piece. Or they're bluffing, right? Because if you have all those first 3 and they're still pushing back, driving a hard bargain, chances are they've already decided to work with you. You don't have to make any unnecessary concessions, right? And so a lot of times that's what we're trying to flush out.
I love that. So the 4 reasons someone could say lack of vision, lack of data, lack of authority or budget, or they're bluffing. That's so good.
And so we do that. We do this all the time. Example, we had a customer or a client, I should say. They were building an enterprise sales team. They were B2C or B2B. They built an enterprise sales team to go B2C. They were negotiating with Booz Allen Hamilton was the company on the other side. We never talk about who our clients are, but we don't mind talking about who the other side is sometimes. So they were working with a business committee. Really, we thought there was 2 main champions on that committee that were kind of signing up to the price tag of the program, which was pretty hefty price tag, to where if it was successful, they're going to look really good. If it's, doesn't go well, egg on their face. Yeah. Not a good situation. So our team was working with this committee for, I want to say around 3 months. Right? trying to convince them our solution's the best. It was a competitive situation. There was 2 other bids. The committee reported to our GM of the business unit and said, we want to work with you. We've decided we're most confident in you and your team and your products, your services, and your ability to execute. We're going with you. At this point, we're going to turn you over to legal and procurement to get the paperwork done.
The dreaded procurement
Yeah,
team.
we're going to turn you over to legal and procurement to get the paperwork done so we can get started and hit our timelines. I said, okay, great. First email to our GM is from a vice president of procurement, something to the effect of, we'd like to schedule a meeting with you next week. However, it may not even make sense to move forward if you're not able to sharpen your pencil. You're 20 points higher than your 2 other competitors. So if you're not able to move at all, then perhaps we shouldn't even discuss. Something very similar to that, right? Very aggressive, like you got to do better. You got to sharpen your pencil.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, as you know, when we hear that, we think, okay, that's a statement of preference. You have to do better. You have to sharpen your pencil. Those are statements of preference. We actually look for decisions, real decisions. So our GM calls us and says, what do I do? Do we discount 10%? Do I discount 5%? Because this deal was huge. They're going to go fundraise off this deal.
Okay. It
So
was
they're
a make or break.
Yeah, make or
negotiation for
break,
the company.
a big deal for
Yeah.
them. And we said, okay, read us the email again. They did. Derek and I both said, listen, there's no decision in there. They're just making statements of preference. But let's assume it is a decision. Which of these 4 is happening? Is a lack of vision of benefit? No, it's not. You spent months with that committee. We know it's not that. Lack of data. No, they have use cases. They have all kinds of data on other programs you've done. It's not that. Lack of authority. Does this vice president of procurement have authority? Right? A lot of times that's a problem. Because some companies give procurement a lot more authority than others. Right? So we're like, okay, could be that one. Or are they bluffing as a tactic to drive concessions? Right. So we said it's probably a combination or one, either 3 or 4. So what's the response? So we said, forget about how much of a discount. We're going to go back with, thank you for reaching out. We understand this is a competitive process, comma, what is it about our solution that still has us in contention? We know it's a competitive process. We're 20 points more expensive. What is it about us that still has us in contention? We wanted to see if she could even answer that.
Interesting.
Right? I mean, if she could answer that, that tells us she knows a lot more about the program.
Yeah, maybe it wasn't a bluff.
Yeah. So
that's great.
Next question was, clarity would be helpful for me and my team, comma, are you officially rejecting our proposal on behalf of Booz Allen Hamilton? That's a verb-led question. Are you officially rejecting our proposal?
Right.
If she could have come back and said, yes, we're officially rejecting.
Yes.
And I know why you're still in contention, but pricing is most important. Okay, that means you would have heard the word no one time. She's officially rejecting. But that's not what happened. The 2 business champions were CC'd, and there was an internal, the most important negotiation is the one you're never going to be in the room for. It's the one that happens on the other side, right? You're never going to have an audience.
That's right.
There was an internal negotiation amongst the 2 champions and what the vice president of procurement. And it came back that they pretty much told her to stand down. This is the team, get it done. And they didn't have to, discount anything.
God, I love that. I just want to say, by the way, I have used that tactic so many times where if you think the other side is bluffing, which you don't know, that question, you say, are you officially letting me know on behalf of your company you're deciding to reject? You're deciding not to move forward? It's such an amazingly powerful tactic. And what a simple question. You're just seeking clarity.
But the key is you have to ask that with genuine curiosity.
Yeah.
If you ask it with an edge on it,
Yeah.
it's going to backfire.
Yeah.
So you really turning this down? Are you officially rejecting? No, that's not how you ask that. And the way you do ask it, we know because we've worked with you, is with genuine curiosity. You don't know,
Yeah.
but you're asking because once you know, you can plan your next agenda.
Right. I love that. Okay. What was the second thing you're going to do?
I don't want to leave without getting out one of my favorite Healey stories.
Okay, great. Let's do it.
You're a favorite client for a reason. And one of the things that happened when we first met, when you were selling one of your companies, you were running out of cash, as is your habit.
Yeah.
And you said, well, my board told me, we're not going to fund you anymore. Hire a banker and sell the business and send letters to your top 5 customers. And our reaction was, we don't believe you should do that. We believe you should reject. You should reject that from your board. I said, wait a minute, what do you mean reject? Just tell your board you're not going to do that. And you said, reject my board? I mean, is that even legal? Can I do that? And the answer is yes. You can reject. You always have the right to reject, as we say in our system.
Right.
However, you don't have a right to reject the consequences. And the consequences are, they might fire you.
Right, yeah. Turns out that's one of their jobs.
And they're exquisite at that. But you do have the right to reject and think through the consequences. And it may be the first time when you reject, it may be the first time that your opponent, your respected opponent, even has to think about an alternative to what they wanted to have happen. And we don't think about things until we actually have to.
I love that. Okay, so last thing is, let's say you're a founder and you've heard this conversation. You're like, hey, gosh, there's this process, it's mission and purpose, and there's a way to ask questions. There's all these kind of things. If there is one takeaway you want a founder to leave with, who's going into high-stake negotiations, one takeaway, just this is your North Star to keep you safe, what would it be?
I would counsel founders to dispel the notion, by definition, founders are always in this position. They're always in David and Goliath situation.
Yes.
From the first time you try to raise your first seed money, you think your opponent has all the authority and you are completely vulnerable. And much of that is true, but you don't get your authority in your ability to negotiate from your balance sheet or your bank account or even who your VC is. You get your authority to negotiate by understanding your right to reject. And so that's where first thing we try to accomplish. And you are vulnerable, but you're not vulnerable for all those other things. You're vulnerable as a founder because you're doing something that's never been done before. And that, in fact, is why you're talking to the other party, is because that's what they see. You see all these other vulnerabilities, but they're not, in fact, nearly as threatening as not being able to build the thing you've said you're going to build and get it to work.
I love that. One thing you said, I'm going to butcher this. You said the formula for innovation is, what is it again?
Yeah, we often have our clients come to us and say, oh, they're asking for our financials.
Yeah.
We can't show them our financials because as soon as they see we're out of money in a few weeks, we're out of money in a few months, we have a cash out date. As soon as they see our cash out date or our runway, they're going to walk away. And we say, yes, you're vulnerable for that reason, but you're going to show them that, and you're going to say, yes, when they say, you guys are out of cash in 3 months. That's right. That's part of the formula for innovation. What brings innovation is a few really talented, smart people working on a highly constrained problem at the constant threat of insolvency. That's what delivers innovation. And you don't say this part, but you're thinking, in fact, that's why you have to come to us for innovation, because you don't have a small group of people. You're a massive company. You guys no longer innovate. There's a few companies that come to mind, even in Fortune 500 companies, and they're not working on highly constrained problems.
Yeah,
they're constantly funding, and there's no end.
Drowning in cash.
They're drowning in cash.
Yeah.
So they can't get innovation. They still don't know why. That's why they have come to you. So don't be afraid to tell them, yes, that's right.
I love that.
And when they say, well, we don't fund you, or if you don't take our terms, what are you going to do? And the answer is, I haven't decided that yet. You're right. I am going to run out of money if I don't figure out what to do. I'm going to have to find new energy and new weapons and make new decisions. The only thing I've decided at this point is I'm not going to take that deal we're talking about.
That was awesome. That was fucking great.
Your listeners might be surprised that we coach, that something like that sounds aggressive, but it's so effective. It provides 100% clarity to the other party. We're not going to take the deal you have put in front of us as it stands today.
Yep.
Forget about the fact we don't have much time. We may go out of business. We're going to, work to think about what do we do next, but we're not taking this deal.
The thing that's so wild about that is you're taking this chess piece, which is like vulnerability, off the board. You're like, yep, I own it. Yeah, we're out of cash in 18 weeks. Still not doing this deal. What now? God, like, what are they going to do? They're like, well, I guess I don't have any power and leverage the way that I thought I did because I'm a Fortune 10 company or whatever it is. God, it's so good.
Well, they probably also, a lot of times, hate to say it, the power and leverage mindset in negotiation, they make a lot of assumptions
Yes.
about what your alternatives are, what other options you have. That's a whole nother series we could talk about, BATNA, and there's a lot here. We should come back maybe in 6 months or something. But
Yeah.
they make all these assumptions on what your alternatives are just to try and find leverage to use against you so they can get a win-win deal, right? So they're using power and leverage to try and force you into a win-win deal. Contradictions are ridiculous.
The other thing of it that's so wild to me, and this is from your book, that I just think is like, as in your playbook, not the book, is people sometimes, they go into these negotiations and they use all these asshole tactics. And they don't remember that when the negotiation's over, usually that's the beginning of the go forward relationship. And so you're not looking to, just win the negotiation and be done and walk away. You got to get something that sticks, that sets you up for success. And it's really hard to have a great relationship with your new boss who just bought your company if you're a total during the negotiation.
One thing Derek told me one time, which I liked, or I couldn't, I started dying laugh when I heard it. What makes you think you can treat people that way? Tell that story really quick.
When I was being trained in the venture business, I was a board observer alongside of the partner who was training me, and he just ripped into a founder during a financing discussion, just in an awful way.
What?
And I was at Adobe Ventures at the time, and he was our general partner outside of Adobe. And I left, and we went to dinner, just the two of us. And if Adobe ever heard anyone speak like that, you'd be fired. Where I worked, the culture didn't allow that. So at dinner, I asked this VC, what gives you the right to think you can treat people that way and speak that way to people? He said, Derek, it's really simple. We have the money and they don't. Talk about, don't be a jerk. And I thought, oh, okay. And I said, so what happens someday if we don't have the money? What do we do then? And of course, a lot of venture funds realize that when they have the money, they can behave that way.
Yeah.
But at times when they're out of reserves for that company, or they don't want to make a capital call right now, and suddenly they don't have the money, what happens then?
I think I know.
Yeah.
Payback time.
It's payback time. So I was shocked when I heard that. And if that can't be your system, that can't be your system. We have the money, and we have the money, and they don't.
Totally.
That's the ultimate power and leverage for people.
We're looking to build very strong, long-lasting business relationships using power and leverage to force your deal or treat people that way.
Yeah.
You get a deal that doesn't stick.
What kind of business relationship are you going to have?
It's going to fall apart.
They're going to be so jaded that at some point in time, they're going to remember how you treated them to get them where they are. And they're going to probably retaliate or leave, which,
This reminds me of one question I started asking people on the corp dev team is I say something to the extent of like, how long do you plan to be at this company? Because if they go, well, year and a half, like they don't care about a deal that sticks. They're just trying to get a killer deal. So like, I need to negotiate with someone else.
You're not going to work with them once the deal closes. And, after integration, you're not even going to ever talk to that person.
That's right.
Same with attorneys. Same with bank.
That's right.
Same with bankers.
That's right. Yes.
We have a lot more material we need to come back.
Yeah, I agree with that. Thank you so much. This is great.